I think by now you would have already warmed up with a long list of questions because I myself have a couple of questions to ask Dato' Han. The problem is becoming more obvious now. We have the only formal findings from the public sector via the AG report. Every time it's presented to Parliament, we hear the same things. Wastage, mismanagement, misconduct, and most of all, we hear about millions of money being lost because of this. It's our money, remember that. And the other thing is the government's now going to introduce the GST, a consumption-based tax, which is going to tax you even more. Now the question is, where is that money going to go to? Is that going to go back to us? Is that going to go back to the benefit of the people and so on? Now back to what MECC does with the audit report. For me, it's very troubling that a lot of the wrongdoing in the audit report cannot be deemed as a criminal offense, which means people who conduct those wrongdoings cannot be charged in court. And then you find that, what Dato' Han said, there's very few cases that actually get opened up, and it's so difficult to prove corruption in the public sector because it's a hidden crime. And it's a hidden crime, and it's being hidden from us. So what do we need to do? We obviously need to drive some kind of transparency revolution, but we need the help of all these different public institutions to help us get there. Now, let me get our last speaker for the panel tonight before we open up the floor to questions and answers. Stephen Sim, Director for Penang Institute, to give us some of his thoughts on the Auditor General's report.
Thank you, Cynthia. Dato' Nur Jaslan told me I have really nothing else to say. And I told Zaira just now, they should actually invite the CM to be on the panel rather than me. But before I begin, I would like to correct one errata in Dato' Han's speech. He said, imagine driving from BM to Penang. BM is Penang. It is unfortunate that the Auditor General's office cannot send a representative today, but I want to begin my discussion with, risking our reputation as a hospitable host by calling the Auditor General Joker. But let me explain myself for the sake of honored guests. How many of you here are fans of Batman? Wow. But how many of you here have watched Christopher Nolan's 2008 very, very dark version of The Dark Knight? Thank God. So you will know what I'm saying after this. I mean, the one where Heath Ledger acted as the Joker, and then he committed suicide after the filming, sparking speculation that it was because of the psychological stress of playing the Joker. It was a very dark version of a Joker that caused him to commit suicide, but he eventually won an Oscar for the role of Joker. Do you remember the plot? Let me remind you, somewhere in the movie, Batman, our superhero, and his friend, the police commissioner, Gordon, decided to corroborate, to keep the crimes of the Attorney General secret so that the public morale in Gotham City can be maintained. In other words, the government itself, the Attorney General, the superhero, and the police, the government itself, coming together to tell a lie so that the so-called peace and stability can be preserved. Sounds familiar to us? Never mind, Batman is a vigilante who took the law into his own hand, owned weapons of mass destruction, and in that movie, a supercomputer which was able to spy on every citizen through their smartphones. Never mind, Batman hides the truth about his true real identity behind a black mask. Never mind if Bruce Wayne, the real identity of Batman, is a billionaire playboy, a real estate speculator, a defense contractor who sells weapons and jets to the military. Never mind if he is the elite 1% who threw yacht party on his love boat for Russian ballet troops. If you watch the movie, you'll know what I'm saying. Never mind all that. Batman is our superhero, our hero. That is basically our idea of a stable society. as long as the sins of the 1%, the elite, the powerful, are masked in some charitable or heroic act, they can go on sinning, business as usual. But who then, in this very confusing plot, who then is the villain? The Joker, of course. The Joker in the movie whose sole mission is actually to expose the hidden identity of Batman, his biggest secret, along with it, the government's plot to conceal the crimes of the Attorney General. He is basically the anarchic arch-villain bent on disrupting public peace, disturbing peace, the harmony, destabilizing the society. The Joker is the antithesis of a stable society, built on subjecting the masses to lies, which in turn sustains the powers that be. And because exposing the truth means jeopardizing public stability and peace, the Joker must be eliminated at all costs. In that movie, the whole government machinery, from the police to the SWAT team, in our local version would be the FRU, UTK, the whole legal system basically all aim their might against this one individual, the clown. So I wonder the joke is really on whom? Isn't it amazing that, friends, today Hollywood chose to portray the heroes as compulsive liars, while the only guys, or the only one seems to be interested in the truth are now the bad guys. And how the truth seems to threaten to destabilize our society so much that the defender of the society, the law enforcers, the Attorney General, the paramilitary police, the Congress, in other words, the government itself, for the sake of stability, harmony, peace, work hard to preserve the lie which keep everything in order. I think from this perspective, it is then not too impolite that in our Malaysian society, that I call the Auditor General and the likes Joker. I mean, similarly, look at Malaysia. Just like Batman's Gotham City, we threaten to jail people for exposing Cowgate scandal, whistleblowers who leak evidences of corruption. I remember my friend Zaire and I, we did a press announcement about the Deputy Prime Minister's golf escapade in Dubai. And the next thing you know, the Chief Secretary threatened in the press to punish civil servants who expose the schedule of the Deputy Prime Minister. So it is a very interesting terbalik society, to say the least. I think in such situation, the Attorney General becomes, the Auditor General becomes a very important institution, if the Joker can be said to be an institution. It is not heroic, it is not self-presumptuous, but precisely the opposite. I mean, look at Tan Sri Amrin. I look at him and I think he is a very, he shows a very dispassionate personality. And like what Cynthia has said, a rare gem among civil servants today. It's not heroic, not self-presumptuous, but precisely the opposite. He is anti-hero. The Auditor General is an anti-hero, because the office must not assume it will save anyone's behind from the fire, but to constantly threaten instability by exposing abuses of power that be. I mean, notably in the last few years, the audit report is one of the most anticipated government documents in Malaysia. And this coming from a generation which has lost trust on government. And I'm not just talking about the federal government, but I think around the world, governments are facing or struggling with credibility issue. Coming from that generation, I must say that the Auditor General's office is the last frontier of trust and accountability. But friends, don't get me wrong. We all know the problems here. We know about the abuses, the overspending, the leakages, the corruption, even before the AG report comes out. Or at least people like Rafizi, Ramli and Tony Pua seems to know. I mean, all of us know the problem. Remember Youth Day 2012, K-pop. At that time, K-pop was still halal, permissible, because the government brought them in. From the first day, people were already questioning the extravagance of the event. 1.6 million ringgit just for the K-pop performance. And it was one of the first issues that I highlighted or I raised when I went into Parliament in 2013. I questioned why the cost ballooned from the original 15 million to 55 million to finally 68 million just for a Youth Day celebration. Nothing happened. And then the AG report highlighted it, whoosh. Khairi Jamaluddin finally said, okay, no more Hari Belia at that scale, no more K-pop, because the AG report highlighted it. I mean, For a number of years, onebistari.net, for a year, for a period of a year, I look at Zairiel and I said, well, I also get bored, you're not bored. For a year, Zairiel, my friend, has spoken tons about the problems of One Bistari Net project, which will eventually cost taxpayer over 4 billion ringgit in a period of 15 years. Nothing happened. But then the third series of the Auditor General report came out last November, highlighting the same problem, basically saying what Zairiel has been saying. The dynamics change. Not only there was a vindication of opposition's protest, Zairiel is smiling, but now the government itself, I mean, the last I checked, the AG office still has, the website still has .gov appended to it. Now the government itself is confessing to its own sin, complete with revelation of details. It is one thing if Tony or Rafizi do an expose in the media, but it makes a whole lot of difference when an official channel like the Auditor General tells us the problem with data and facts. It is one thing to know that your spouse is cheating on you, but this is another if you finally see photographs, compromising photographs. No wonder now the PAC is finally moving in on One Bistari Net. But then again, what's wrong here? If everything is so good, why are we here? I was actually asked to give suggestion of the title of the forum today, so it's actually not fair. Being on the panel, I must confess that I have a hand to pick the title. I thought that instead of running through volumes of AG reports, which the CM gave snippets of it, let's talk about the institution as a whole. We are faced with a question. If they are good, if the AG are so good, why is there still so much abuses in public spending? Hence the question, formality or accountability. I think the answer is very clear. While the AG is doing a great job, it is now like a nagging spouse. All steam but no fire. I said spouse, so I didn't say wife. Safe. I like what our panelists say about, instill, what Dr. Nojazlan said about instill the fear of being audited. But the problem is, if there is no strict penalty or non-compliance, there's no fear of being audited. It's just part of the formality, every year in and year out. I think what we really need to do is what Chinese say, you have to break the bloody steel rice bowl. Chinese calls a career in the civil service as a steel rice bowl. Whether in China or in Malaysia, around the world, steel rice bowl, which means basically it is a very stable career. No one can do anything to you. If you commit a mistake, the most transferred or cold storage, but you still draw your salary. I think what is more important is to eliminate this idea of civil service being a steel rice bowl rather than the fear of being audited. But fear, yes, but if there's no strict action or non-compliance, I don't mind being audited every year. I mean, if the government has heeded its own advice in the AG report, we can definitely defer GST this year. I mean, latest number from the Prime Minister last November, I think, GST revenue is expected to bring in 23 billion, around roughly 23 billion. But contra the exemptions, contra the foregone revenue from the abolished SST, the new consumption tax will eventually give the federal government an extra 5.6 billion next year. Just 2% of the total projected federal revenue, federal income revenue in 2015 budget. I mean, compare this to the infamous 28 billion ringgit loss every year from overspending from the 2009 AG report. If only the government has heeded its own advice. And then, even in areas which the AG actually has power, i.e. investigating public accounts, it has very limited scope. In the same forum in KL previously, the AG himself said that they have no power, or I'm quoting Malaysian Insider here, they have no authority to investigate the latest two major scandals, one MDB and KLIA2, which KLIA2 was recommended by the PAC to be investigated or to be audited by the AG office. But to me, all these are important weaknesses that we have to address. But what is more dangerous is this. What is more worrying is not that the AG is merely a toothless tiger. We can correct all that when we take Putrajaya, Datuk Nur Jazlan. But rather, thank you. But rather, by issuing damning reports against itself, the government is essentially disavowing its own crime. Let me explain. Now, the chief secretary, which is the head of the PSD, the chief secretary now can say to to us, look, we are not perfect, but we are doing something and we are heading towards perfection. Now, our minister can tell us this. Look at Singapore's audit report, only 70 pages. In that sense, we have already exceeded the norms of accountability in public service. Friends, this is not menipu rakyat anymore. This is menipu diri sendiri. The government believing in its own lies. The government thinks of itself as a righteous Batman. No wonder, weeks before the leading up to the 13th January election, in the news we saw comics were distributed in schools depicting Prime Minister Datuk Sri Najib as
Stephen, I hate to interrupt the Batman story, but you've run out of time.
Okay, just
more.
Okay, yeah. I mean, depicting Najib as a cape superhero in tights, with Anwar depicted as a robber figure in a clownish black and white striped shirt, reminiscent of Bip the Clown. You know, Marcel Marceau, the French mime artist. There you go, our very own Gotham City. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Nice analogy with Batman used with our real context. Now, the sad thing to inform us all is that the Joker, the Auditor General, the hero, is actually retiring. He's had a long, illustrious career, but he's retiring at the end of January, which is in a couple of days' time. And now we really need to be even more worried, because the one thing we could hold on to was that the Auditor General was doing a marvelous job in just demonstrating the story, the real scenario as it is. He called a spade a spade. Now we don't know who his replacement is going to be, but your guess is as good as mine, and we don't know whether the next person is going to be just as vigilant or not. So that raises our need to be more vocal, our need to be heard, and our need to be more organized in the way we want to actually bring up the issues of public spending. And so this is really what the forum is about. So we have about 20 to 30 minutes for questions and answers, and I'm sure that there are comments you'd like to make as well. Can you please introduce yourself? Keep your comments brief, and please, if you have a comment specifically to any of the panelists, actually state that, so it's easier for them to know who you're asking the questions to. Can I have a show of hands? Anybody wants to ask a question? Yes?
Yes, a few comments, if you don't mind. Okay, first we heard that the Anti-Corruption Act does not work against these people, because you can't show that they have received gratification, that money has changed hands. True, maybe you can't. But when, say now, the case of Balik Pulau Mara College, they bought 2 laptops for about $85,000. Do you think no money changed hands between those people? All right, you can't do it because you can't prove that money changed hands. But what about another law, if you apply it? Criminal breach of trust. Is there no criminal breach of trust? Now, they are given money under a certain, I'm sure there is an element of trust there. There's an element of trust there. All right, you are given $10 million for your institution. Now, that money has to be used in a certain way. There must be some directive of law telling them or instructing them how the money is to be used. Now, does it say that you can spend like your grandfather's money? That can you say that if laptops are being sold for 3,000 in the market, you can spend 40,000 for a laptop and get away with it? What are the instructions for them to spend that money? And why is never been talked about this thing, criminal breach of trust? Are we looking at the wrong law and barking up the wrong tree? All right, and one more thing. Nur Jaslan just now mentioned about society 30 years ago. He said people were different. They didn't have the idea, okay, I will try to pocket some money. I will try to do this. Yes, but why has that come about? Do we give that a thought? Now compare that to a school situation. 30, 40 years ago, schools were so disciplined. Right? Why were they so disciplined? Now, they were allowed to use the rotan. Yes? And there was strict discipline in the school. Now, without the rotan in the school, you are breeding indiscipline in the school. These are the people growing up to be indisciplined in society. If they are not being taught this, now you expect to teach them this through your anti-corruption laws? Yeah, your anti-corruption law is not going to work because you don't see them taking money. But can we believe that $40,000 over paid for a laptop and no money went into anybody's pocket? And one more thing, just last little bit. Now, I will summarize this thing. In the Malay proverb here, jika hendak seribu daya, jika tidak seribu dalih. So what we can conclude is the government just does not want to do anything. Because if you want to do anything, this has been going on for 30 over years. You had 30 years to change the laws, to improve the laws, to do all that you could. But you have not been doing anything. So it can only be said that you are not willing, the government does not want to do it. I don't know why. You want them to just rob this. Yeah, is this a government policy that, well, make money while the sun shines? Yeah, I remember Mahathir in his Malay Dilemma book, he was telling, that to the Malay people, he said, if you make money, anyhow you make money, it's okay, so long as you don't get caught.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, that really got the ball rolling. There are 4 questions here. Yes, there are 4 questions here. May I just get one more question before I pass it over to the panelists to respond? Yes?
Hello, my name is Chi Han. I have a question for Dr. Zaslan. Given the news these days about the serious damning reservation about 1 MDB, and I think this would cause a serious dent in confidence to the local and foreign investors. So you as a head of a PAC, when will I see you start inquiring into these issues?
Okay, thank you very much. So we've got questions about the law. Are we using the wrong law? The efficiencies of the law? Why aren't we able to actually nab people, knowing very well that even without the AG report, we know that money is being passed hands. But we're hearing the institutions say that they are disempowered, they can't really do very much. And then we got a very specific question on 1MDB, which is like the hottest potato, the big topic in town. Even in our KL forum, the Auditor General himself was hard-pressed to provide an answer. So I will pass the microphone to Dato' Han first, and then to Dato' Nur Jazlan and Stephen.
Thank you for raising a very good and very relevant point. Now, currently the Anti-Corruption Act is quite comprehensive in certain aspects, in the sense that when we investigate corruption cases, there are other offences under the Penal Code which are prescribed offences under our Anti-Corruption Act, like what you rightfully said, offence of criminal breach of trust, offence of criminal misappropriation, forgery, cheating. These are all offences. Well, if you have a case where a public servant, has spent excessively in breach of money that was entrusted to him, well, I agree. There may be a case of the criminal breach of trust, and if there was such a case, and if the elements of the offence of criminal breach of trust is established, naturally the MACC will recommend prosecution. The current law, as it relates to corruption, okay, it involves one gratification. There may be only cases where you use a false document, okay. No gratification involved, but the documents is false in material particulars. For instance, we charge a case involving the purchase of camera. He is supposed to deliver the digital camera, but the camera delivered was not digital. So that was not in accordance to specifications. Of course, there are certain provisions in our Act, especially our Section 18, where a document that is used, contains false material particulars, and which document was used to mislead the principal into making payments, it can be charged under this Act. But a lot of cases in the audit report, you see, it's not like that. Now, we would love to have cases like, where there is no proper supply of goods, there is things are built not according to specifications, false certification, then he can cover. But there are also a lot of acts which involve negligence, which we cannot go under the law. That's why the MACC is fighting very hard for an offence of public misconduct. If you look at the British Commonwealth law, they have British law under the common law system. They have an offence of public misconduct. If you look at this case of public misconduct, there was a case of a policeman who failed to stop a fight, outside a nightclub, or I think it was a restaurant. Okay, Regina against Ditem. He was charged for offence of public misconduct, in the sense that was his duty to prevent the fight. How come he did nothing? It was very reckless of him not to do anything, and then someone died. That kind of offence, we are trying to go for an offence where there is a clear breach. When you occupy a position of public duty, you are as a public officer, there are certain duties and power that you are supposed to perform in accordance to the position that is afforded to you. But if you divert, you do it recklessly due to some motives, corruption maybe, or you're just plain negligence, or you're plain disobedience, and then this was without any justification or excuse, and then there's a great departure from regulations which you cannot explain, then you should be charged for public misconduct. I think countries like Hong Kong, India, they have this kind of law. So MACC is trying to have a codified version of this law so that we can deal with a lot of offences in the that is disclosed in the public, the Auditor's General Report, which currently, accepting that, we can go look into offences of CBT, cheating, extortion, or what, But we need certain law to deal with the offences that is raised by the Auditor General Report. Thank you.
I'd like to address the question of people and the system. I was watching TV today on Yingluck Shinawat, the case. If you look at the facts of the charge against her, is that the Thai government had a rice buying scheme approved by the cabinet, was operated, suffered losses. Now the current military government says, Yingluck, you are wrong. But the scheme was approved by her cabinet. It was a collective decision, and it's how do you say retrospective. Now, to me, that's extreme, because if you try to basically formulate a system that it sounds ridiculous to me, because executive needs to make decisions that work, because you can't hamper every single decision of the executive. Then nobody will want to make a decision. So you need to have a balance between what you allow the executive to do and the legal framework that underpins what they can actually do. So back to the question just now about CBT as such. Your understanding of CBT is different. That's your opinion. But the legal system we have today is a legal system that has laws that has the right balance. But times change. So sometimes we need to amend the law. This is where your understanding and what the government is doing differs. And like I said, your understanding of the law cannot also restrict the executive too much, because nobody will want to make decisions. So that's my point to answer your question. 30 years ago, people were less susceptible to corruption because the amounts involved in public expenditure was small. Now it's big. Therefore, the temptation is higher. But like I said, you cannot perceive people as being corrupt. You need to prove that they are corrupt. And that's the problem that we have today. Okay? On 1MDB. Okay, let me tell you what problem the PAC has. I think the AG explained in a forum in KL about 1MDB, where he said the 1MDB is already audited by international firms, the big four. Okay, two of them were not willing, but there was one who was willing lah. But still, is audited by a big reputable international firm with the right amount of people, with the right skill of people, which has better competency than the AG's department staff itself. So what value added would his department's audit be on 1MDB when you already have, the big international firm, with the right competency certifying the 1MDB accounts. Okay, forget about the change of auditors, change of CEOs, and the figures that Tony Pua and Rafizi put up, because their figures also are not correct in many cases. But they have done enough to basically drive the perception in people's minds that there is something, really, really very wrong with 1MDB. Now, I myself do not know, very much details about it because I haven't read the auditor's report yet on 1MDB. But if you ask PAC to go and call 1MDB, we need a basis on why we are going to call them. That's why the procedure is, with the PAC, we usually look at the Auditor General's reports, because the Auditor General has sent his team into any government department to do his investigations and then highlight these are the issues. In this case, you already have reputable auditors, international auditors, doing the audit of the 1MDB, and they've cleared it. So what are we going to use as a basis to do our investigations? You see? That is how it should be done. Independence. Auditor General does his report, does his investigation independently. We do our investigations independently. The reputable auditors do their audit independently. If they say it's okay, then where is our role to basically call 1MDB? Out there, the perception is many things lah. The name of Mr. Joe Low has been bandied about. But is he a director of the company? Is he a shareholder of the company? Is he involved in any part of the company? He's not. So how are we going to call him? Because the people will say, oh, he's involved. But what locus standi are we going to call him based on? So that's also another problem. That's why we need the agency department to go in, do the investigations, and then we review their work. On KLI 2, we had the same problem. Because companies under Khazanah are exempted from the Auditor General's purview on the same reason that they are audited by reputable the big international auditors, which they are, but only on a financial audit basis. But KLI 2, the PAC felt very strongly, and remember, we have opposition members in our committee, we felt very strongly that the airport was going to be used by hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people who will use the airport every year. And therefore, they would see any deficiencies or any weaknesses with the KLI 2 project. So that's why we decided to invoke our public interest clause in our terms of reference. Even though the KLI 2, the Auditor General is not allowed to do the audit on that, we call them. We call, the Ministry of Transport. Ministry of Transport says it's not our responsibility. It's MAHB. We call MAHB. MAHB says everything that's wrong about KLI 2 is AirAsia. So we call AirAsia. AirAsia says MAHB is at fault. So we compile all these reports and then all these statements, and then we look at the discrepancies. Now, for us to recommend any action, there again is the problem. We don't have any, there was no investigation done on the KLI2 project. So where's the basis for us to make any conclusions? So that's why, in our recommendations, we took the discrepancies. We listed it down. You can get the report, our PAC report from from the Parliament, if you want. So we asked the government to allow the Auditor General to go and investigate the discrepancies in the KLI2 project that we have highlighted. For example, change of design, and then they boosted up the passenger arrival figures. That's why the cost also ballooned up. So, like I said, our problem with the PAC is there are structures, corporate governance structures that are in place today. There are legal structures in place. In carrying out our work, we have to basically set the processes. And you have to follow the due process. And like I said, at the end of the day, it is to make our work valuable enough for it to be used by MACC if there's any corruption cases. We provide the evidence. MACC, can you please look into this? And then if they confirm it, then it can be brought to court. Negligence by the civil servants, we pointed out, the Chief Secretary of the government, now you take action against these people. And the AG itself, if you look at the AG's website, there is a dashboard, and this is something new, where the AG lists out all the reports that they have done, all the reports that we have reviewed, and then what actions have been recommended, and what actions have been taken. So this is a running scoreboard. All of you can have a look. If the government has not taken action yet against certain individuals, against certain people, then organizations like C4 can keep talking about it. Highlight, make it transparent to the people. Hey, on this issue, no action is being taken. Can you please, like for example, the incinerator. We did a report on the incinerator where we recommended that the SecGen and the experts involved in approving the technology used in the incinerators that didn't work very well. We recommended that action be taken against them. So that was 3 months ago. I don't know whether the ministry has taken action or the KSN has taken action against them. But like I said, the information there is available for all of you and also for C4 to continue. Why haven't you taken action against these people? And take action against these people. And if you don't take action against these people, this is proof that the government is not doing its job. So when the election comes, you make up your mind. But at least everything is done in a very calculative, in a very evidentiary-based manner for you to base your decisions on. Not on what Sim has talked about, this and that. For sure, he knows corruption happens, but then if you ask him to prove, can it stand up in court? No. Rafizi talks so much. Here are the figures, this and that. Can you prove the figures in court? No. You need work by MACC, Auditor General, by the police, whatever, to produce this evidence that can stand up in court or that can stand up, in action that's going to be taken by the civil service. Thank you.
Stephen?
Which is why I ended my discussion by saying that the most dangerous thing is not that the AG has no power or the MAC has no power, but the most dangerous thing is look at all the talk about the limitation of the law, due process, evidence, etc. I think I'm not saying that we should go against the law. But what I'm saying is that this is self-vindication. This is disavowing. I've done my best. Which is why Paul Lau, the Minister for Transparency, can say that, look at the Auditor General's report. Singapore is only 70 pages. We have exceeded the norms. This is my worry, Dato. I think the problem is with the law can be changed. I like what Dato Han said about the offence of public misconduct. And he said he's fighting very hard for it. I want to ask, fighting who? Because we will support you in Parliament. Dato' Nur Jazlan, I'm sure, will support him in Parliament. We'll support MACC if they were to table or to propose this act to the government to be tabled in Parliament. I think if there is a problem with the due process, there is a problem with the law, we can change it to suit to be relevant to our time. I actually listed a few. I think the AG office must be fully independent. Right now, it is reporting to the government, to the executive. I think the AG office should be put under the Parliament because, AG audit is different from the Big Four audit. AG report is supposed to scrutinize public spending so that it is in line with the will of the Parliament, which technically means the will of the people, for better or for worse. So, but Big Four audit, financial audit is different. So we cannot say that just because the Big Four has audited 1MDB, there's no need for the AG to audit on them, to investigate on them. So I think it should be fully independent and should be reflected in its hierarchy, reporting directly to the Parliament. And I believe that anyone should be able to request the AG to investigate. Of course, then you will say, hey, I cannot lion everyone. If every Tom, Dick, and Harry comes. I mean, there is process that can be put in. The AG can have a preliminary investigation, prima facie evidence, but anyone should be able to instruct, or at least MP, Tony Poa and Rafizi is not simply any fella talking about 1MDB. This is MP, and this is nationalist interest, billions of ringgit at stake. So MP has no power to request the AG. Even PAC has no power up to now. KRA too. PAC has no power. No, PAC has no power to instruct, to request for an audit by the AG report. I'm not saying you should investigate it, but to instruct. PAC is not just any simple Tom, Dick, and Harry. Dato' Nur Jazlan is definitely one of the best PAC leaders we have, but no power to instruct AG to do something. And I think we need to expand the authority of the AG office to allow it to initiate investigation not only on government departments but on GLCs, on, I must add, very important, PPP, public-private partnership. This is a new trend. KRA2 is a PPP. Yeah? And also the so-called OSA related or OSA protected program schemes like I don't know, the IPP, highway concessionaire. They should be allowed. Why are we hiding? Government should be hiding from the people. Enforcing strict follow-up. I mean, to be fair, not all red marks on the audit report is about corruption, but there must be some kind of strict follow-up within a reasonable time frame to correct the non-compliance, and they must be punished, must be penalty. Otherwise, nobody will fail audit for the sake of audit alone. And finally, I think what is really important, I really like what Dato' Nur Jazlan said about, at the end of the day, just go and change your government, or at the end of the day, just vote. But we all know the problem. We have voted for many, many, many years, decades, but nothing changed. I think what is more important is really not working hard enough, so he's encouraging us to work hard enough. I mean, this is an excellent PAC leader. We should empower transparency and accountability before the AG report, before the spending even takes place. This is the whole problem with the whole system. Yeah, whether it's election or it's public spending, the problem is there. So, open tender. I mean, it is no accident that Penang was commended or praised in the AG report after it has implemented open tender, not because Lim Guan Eng is good looking. I think our friend here is better looking than Lim Guan Eng, but because of transparency mechanism. I think this should be put in place. The PAC head, as good as he is, I don't want to put him in difficult position. We are all politicians. We know the difficulty and challenges of being politician. I mean, why can't the Parliament and of course the Penang State Government emulate Selangor State Government to appoint an opposition leader as the PAC, the head of PAC. Then Dato' Nur Jazlan would not have to answer difficult questions like why one MDB is not being called to PAC or being asked to be audited by the PAC. So yeah, I think reform the system. If the system is not enough, do not give excuses that limitation, due processes. These are all okay. Thank you.